Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you, as always, to everybody out there for watching, for listening, for following, for subscribing. I appreciate y'all very much. This is our weekly Podbag episode. This is the episode where you control the narrative, your questions, your comments, your takes featured on the show. I'm going to respond to them. Also kind of a hybrid show because the Buffalo Bills, well, at least their initial 53-man roster, and it's important to use that word, initial 53-man roster, was set on Tuesday. I am recording this around, what time we got here? Around a little bit after 9 p.m. on Tuesday. So as I record this, the Bills, for now, 53-man roster is set. At some point on Wednesday, I would expect that to change. We will cover that much more on tomorrow's show. Very excited to have Anthony Marino back with me. It's been a couple weeks since I've had Anthony on. He's going to be on tomorrow's show. But again, as for today, your questions, your comments, your takes, same deal every week. If you want your question, comment, or take featured on this weekly episode, it's as simple as going on the Talk Buffalo YouTube channel, leaving a comment on any of the videos. All, at least not, I don't want to say all, but almost all of the full-length episodes are available on video. So go watch any video, leave a comment. If it's a good one, I'll pluck it, or you can tweet at me at Patrick Moran TV, or you can email me talkingbuffalopodcast@gmail.com. That's how we'll get those on. Let's dive right in because this is going to be a pretty packed episode, and I don't want to be here taking up too much of your time. Everybody's got their Bills 53-man roster reactions. This show, of course, is no different as well. So I guess let's just start there. Instead of saying one person or, a handful of people, there's several people who want to know what my thoughts are right now on the Bills' initial 53-man roster. And again, we'll go more in depth tomorrow on the show. There may be some changes by then. But my in the moment reactions and thoughts, surprises, I would say there's three that I would call not major, but certainly notable. One of them is Mitch Trubisky making the team, not being put on IR or getting cut because he's hurt. We saw him limping pretty noticeably. He did not look like a quarterback in practice from what we've seen anyway. That looks really close to being ready to play. So you got the injury factor, and then this other small factor, which for me is I simply think he stinks. I think he stinks. I went to camp 3-4 times, was never impressed with him at all. I thought he looked even lousier in the preseason, and I'm surprised that he didn't get cut. Ben DiNucci also got cut. That was kind of to be expected. My initial thought, which is kind of, I don't say breaking news, so to speak, but this happened just literally before I was getting ready to record. I initially thought Ben DiNucci would be brought back to be the practice squad quarterback, and if Mitch is not ready for week one, which I'm going to be honest, I'd be surprised if he was. Maybe DiNucci gets the call up. However, the Bills reportedly, Adam Schefter was reporting on Tuesday night that they're signing former Jets, former Miami Dolphins backup Mike White to join the Bills practice squad for now. Again, I think he ends up QB2 on this team. I think some point Mitch Trubisky ends up going on IR. And if he doesn't, let me be honest with you. And I'm not going to sit here and pound the table too much for Mike White. I'm not in love with him as a quarterback, but as a backup to Josh Allen, I honestly, and I'm not being a homer here, I mean this, I honestly like him more than any of Josh Allen's backups over these last couple of years. I don't care if it's Mitch Trubisky. I don't care if it's Kyle Allen. I don't care if it's Case Keenum. And I don't care if it's Matt Barkley. I like Mike White better. I don't know how he feels about Matt Milano. Matt Milano almost ended his life when he was in New York Jets. So that may be an interesting exchange. I like to see Bill's social media have those two guys sit down and maybe talk about that play. I think that would be some good content there. But anyway, we're not going to get into Mike White much today. Maybe we'll talk about him more tomorrow. Got to see how things play out. But anyway, that's notable that Mitch Trubisky did not go on IR initially, and that by Tuesday night, the first practice squad official move that the Bills reportedly are making is signing veteran quarterback Mike White. We'll see how that plays out. Surprise two, not shocked, but definitely surprised that Casey Toohill made this team, despite missing most of the summer, pretty much the preseason. He ended up making this football team over Kingsley Jonathan, who I thought had a good camp. I have liked this kid when he's had an opportunity to play over the last couple of years with the Bills, and I thought he had a very strong preseason. I'm very surprised about this move. Apparently, the team feels that Casey Toohill is a better player on special teams, I guess. I don't know. I liked what I saw from Kingsley Jonathan on special teams as well, but I guess you gotta trust Brandon Beane and his staff there. It just felt like all summer long, this was a guy who, no real guaranteed money. I'm talking about Toohill here. That was not going to make this team. He just didn't do anything on the field. He wasn't on the field. And when he was, a few times, he really didn't do anything. So that to me is a pretty big surprise. And then the last one, Daquan Hardy. Maybe we'll learn more about him over the next 24 hours or so. Joe Marino had tweeted something about him that he may have gotten injured in last Saturday's preseason finale. But I thought he did enough to make the team. Apparently he didn't, because instead of him making the roster, the team traded out with the New York Jets, a divisional rival trade, and they picked up Brandon Cordrington. I'll get that right. Codrington. Good God. See, I don't know anything about him. I'll know more about him tomorrow. Who's without question brought in by Buffalo to be their primary kick returner, punt returner. He's a better return option. I've seen a couple clips on Twitter late on Tuesday, and he looked good with the Jets. This is a pick, I think it's like 2 years from now, too, by the way. So this was not like a priority trade. But for the Bills, this guy's probably going to have a role. But anyway, the surprise for me, and we'll talk about Codrington more on tomorrow's show. I'm a little surprised Daquan Hardy did not make this roster. Other notable cuts, KJ Hamler. It's pretty interesting on Tuesday morning as cuts started to leak out. You're wondering, are the Bills going to keep 5 receivers or are they going to keep 6 receivers? And the answer by the early afternoon became pretty apparent that for now, anyway, it's going to be 5. MBS has made this team. Anyway, KJ Hamler got cut. Shavers got cut, which was one of the first leaked cuts on Tuesday. I was mildly surprised by that. Justin Shorter, another one that got cut. It's unfortunate. This guy just never, was going into year 3 and he couldn't stay on the field. And when he was, he didn't show enough. You see the potential in Shorter and why he was a 5th round pick, but ultimately he couldn't stay healthy and didn't do enough. And Isabella also cut. So all those receivers cut, man. All of them. All the ones we spent so much time and energy talking about the back end of the roster over the summer. Hamler, Shavers especially, Shorter, Isabella, all gone. Chase Claypool, injury settlement a couple weeks ago now. So the Bills are going with 5 receivers, and MBS, for now anyway, is going to be that 5th. Also of note, the Bills, both veteran offensive line depth guys, both got cut. Leal Collins and Will Clapp. I thought one of them would probably make the team, especially if they elected to keep 10 offensive linemen. As it turns out, though, they only are going with 9. Again, this could change and maybe change quickly. But for now, the Bills are only going with 9, and both Collins and Will Clapp were victims. They were cut on Tuesday. The Bills right now, offensive line depth is ridiculously young. 2 rookies constitute their depth right now. Tylan Grable, who, by the way, had a really strong summer, a 6th-round pick. He was no lock to make this team. I mean, Daquan Hardy was a 6th-round pick, and he did not make this team. Grable had a good summer. He's played some guard, played some tackle. I think he's going to be a part of the future on this team. But anyway, he made the cut. Cedric Van Pan Granger, another rookie, he made the cut. So you got 2 rookies among your depth, as well as Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandermark. Either of those guys are old. So this is a really young, really inexperienced. Now, Anderson and Vandermark have some, experience in the organization. But in terms of being on the field, playing in the game, not a lot of proven depth at all behind the starters. Last year, the Bills had all 5 of their offensive linemen play all 17 games. Better hope for the same this year. Well, they might be, like I said, looking on the waiver wire for another veteran. Maybe they bring back Collins or Clapp to on the practice squad. And if something goes down, maybe they got to elevate one of those guys. But yeah, 9 offensive linemen, very, very young backups. Matt Milano was designated. He was put on IR with a designation to return, which I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know the ins and outs and the differences between him going on IR on Tuesday or IR on Wednesday. Well, what I will tell you is I very much trust what Joe Marino from Locked On Bills says. And he talked about it being very good for the Bills and Matt Milano's chances of coming back if he was put on IR with the designation to return on Tuesday, as opposed to initially making the roster and being put on IR afterwards. Darrington Evans, same designation as well. Not really stunned by that. In terms of guys who were cut, who could be practice squad priorities, so some young guys, Frank Gore Jr. Real quick, I want to talk about him too, just briefly, because a lot of people thought he made a push to make this football team. And I liked him. He looked really good in the preseason. He looked great, of course, against Carolina. Maybe he's got some good long-term potential. But when you got a team that has James Cook and a 4th-round rookie in Ray Davis and a pretty good veteran, proven backup in Ty Johnson, I don't know where you ever thought there was a spot for a 4th tailback on this team. And on top of that, Frank Gore Jr. did not play a snap of special teams all preseason. And I think I saw Eric Turner from Cover One point out that he only had like 2 even pass blocking attempts. So this guy needs a lot of polishing. He's not ready right now, or at least he's not ready to be in this system. If he's going to be in the NFL right now, Frank Gore Jr., he's going to have to go on a team where he's not going to be the starter, but he's the number 2 back. At worst, he's number 3. Probably number 2, though. If you're going to be a backup running back, you probably got to do other things well, like pass block and be a contributor on special teams. And as of right now, he's not. So I'm not surprised by that, but I do think the Bills would like to get him back. I think Tyrell Shavers would be a high priority practice squad guy. I could see him being somebody who gets elevated if any receiver goes down, or if they just don't want to play MVS early in the season and they want Shavers, who has special teams value, good special teams value, they could bring him up. So I could see him being back. We'll see about Hamler. Offensive lineman Mike Edwards, didn't really hear too many glowing things about him this summer, but heard some good things about him over the last couple of days. I think the Bills might want him back on the practice squad. Corey Couch, a corner who showed a lot of promise throughout training camp. Could see him being back. And then, of course, Hardy. As for the biggest news in terms of the Bills' 53-man roster, of course, it's Joe Andreesson making this roster. I'm not going to be the one to undersell it. I know it's already starting to become to the point of ad nauseum. Everybody's talking about it. I'm sure when you go through a lot of content creator shows over the next 24 hours, a nice, good-looking picture of Joe Andreesson is going to be on that thumbnail. I get it. I'm excited too. But, I can understand why some people are going to be like, all right, enough is enough. Well, no. I'm not going to be the one to undersell this, man. It is an amazing story. It really, really is an incredible story. This guy was not, again, forget about getting drafted He wasn't even signed as an undrafted free agent after the draft. In fact, he had a rookie minicamp tryout with the Kansas City Chiefs a week before he had one with the Bills, and the Chiefs didn't have no interest in even putting him on their 90-man roster. Look where he's come in such a short amount of time. I said this on the show. In part, it's fate. It's opportunity. And were it not for opportunity 2 weeks ago, he don't make this team. Shitty weather and maybe Matt Milano's injury as well leads to Sean McDermott saying, yo, I'm not playing Terrell Bernard. I'm not playing him in Pittsburgh. And then Balin Spector is hurt. That affords Joe Andreesson the opportunity to go out there and look what he did with the opportunity he had. He made the most of it. He answered the bell. And 10 days later, he's a Buffalo Bill. From Buffalo, Lancaster High School, UB. I mean, come on. I'm not going to undersell it. It's incredible. That said, though, be careful because, again, this is Tuesday. This is the first 24 hours. Rosters change. The Bills have 6 linebackers right now. They could make a move somewhere else. They could add another receiver. They can add another corner. They can add another defensive tackle real quick. And the Bills might drop to 5 linebackers. If they do that, Joe Andreesson's spot, he's probably in trouble. Him or the 5th rounder, Olafusio, if they were only to keep 5. So it's a great story. It's an incredible story. No matter what happens for Buffalo Joe to get to this point, this is the shit that movies get made over. Like, seriously. Which, by the way, seen a couple people on social media comparing Joe Andreesson to Rudy. With all due respect, it's a bad comparison. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm all about Rudy. But Rudy was a short kid, an insanely undersized defensive end with pretty much no talent, maybe D3 talent at best, who goes into Notre Dame. He walks on, practices. He's basically on the practice squad. He's a water boy. He's all this and that. He perseveres. And at the very end of the movie, or in real life too, he gets on the field at the very end of his final game, his senior season. Joe Andreesson made the Buffalo Bills because he played his way onto the Buffalo Bills. The kid is a player. The kid is a player. He made plays. He was throwing starting right guards off him in Pittsburgh, hunting down good running backs like Jalen Warren. Rudy ain't doing that shit. So stop with that comparison. It's a terrible one, and I hate it. But anyway, again, congratulations to Buffalo Joe. It is such a great story, and I'm not going to be the one, like I said, to poo-poo on the parade because it's just an incredible story. As for the pod bag, we'll do 1 or 2 of these, and we'll get to a quick break here. Zach Lensalt says, what is a player or area of your team that you were down on your team? I'm assuming the Buffalo Bills, of course, that you were down on coming into training camp, but had your mind change over the past month or so? I love this question, and it's a good one. There wasn't a lot of great developments over the course of the summer with the Buffalo Bills. There were a lot of things that I think we came into camp looking forward to. Wide receivers. I would say the safety position, especially when we go back to receivers, Claypool, MVS, how that was going to play out, guys who have done good things in this league. But it was a pretty uneventful, and uneventful is not always bad, by the way, but it was a pretty uneventful training camp and preseason, with the exception of Matt Milano getting hurt, which sucked. But in terms of like a position or development that I came into camp down on that changed my mind is the cornerback room. I like Christian Benford, and I obviously like Rasul Douglas just fine. But coming into camp, I'm like, I don't trust Kaiir Elam to be the 3. And I'm not counting Teron Johnson. I'm talking about the boundary guys, of course. I do not trust Kaiir Elam. I did not trust Kaiir Elam to be a guy who could come in there and do a good job if one of the 2 starters go down, even though he's had some good moments in the past throughout the early part of his career. I was stunned that throughout the offseason, the Bills never really added a quality veteran, a Dane Jackson type, Levi Wallace type, who could come in if a starter got hurt. I did not like the fact that they were going to rely, potentially anyway, on Kaiir Elam. But that's what they've done. And to Kaiir Elam's credit, I think he had an outstanding summer. And I feel a lot more confident about him than I did a month ago. And furthermore, JaMarcus Ingram, by the way, shout out UB, 3 UB Bulls on the Buffalo Bills. Everyone's talking about Andreesson. Of course, you got Cam Lewis as well. Shout out JaMarcus Ingram. He earned his way onto this football team. I did not think going in, to the summer, he had much of a chance because, again, I thought the Bills would bring in a veteran corner and maybe if they try, they try to trade Kaiir Elam, something like that, but keep him on the roster otherwise, see what happens. But JaMarcus Ingram had a really strong summer and a really strong preseason. So big props to him. I feel really good about the cornerback position for the Bills right now. I think it's a strength on this team. 2 quality starters in Douglas and Benford, a quality third corner in Kaiir Elam, and a guy who's could be a sleeper guy who could do some things, man. JaMarcus Ingram is your 4th corner. And of course, you got Teron Johnson, one of the best slot corners in the entire NFL. So I would say that, the corner position, that's been like the development that I didn't expect that really I changed my mind over the most. Mark Stopa says, the irony here, being overdrafted D-line due to obsession with getting Mahomes on the ground, letting them get Humphrey. All right, a little bit of perspective here. Creed Humphrey last week signed a mega monster deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. Multi-time all-pro center Creed Humphrey. He got like $72 million, 50 guarantees, some crazy shit like that. And sarcastically, it was $50 million guaranteed. I remember now because I remember the tweet I put up, and I was being completely sarcastic. Brandon Beane, and I'm prefacing, or I should say, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. Brandon Beane, great job by Brandon. He saved the Bills $50 million. Thankfully, he passed on Creed Humphrey to take Boogie Basham, saving himself $50 million. I was clearly being sarcastic. Most people took it that way. A lot of people got mad at me over it. Actually, that tweet went viral. It had like 170,000 views in like 3 or 4 days. But anyway, whether that was intended to be funny or not, what Mark just said, and that I'm just pointing that out to kind of let you know where this take from Mark Stopa came about. Because he says the irony here, being overdrafted D-line due to obsession with getting Mahomes on the ground, but then essentially being let them get Humphrey. Well, whether that's intended to be funny or not, it's quite literally actually true. The Bills, Brandon Beane drafted a defensive end in the 1st and the 2nd round in 2021. And then they turned around and spent $1 gazillion on Von Miller in 2022. And when the Bills took Boogie Basham in round 2, the Chiefs swept in, and 2 picks later, they took Creed Humphrey. So, yeah, that's true, man. It hadn't worked. Look, the Bills have been good defensively against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, and they've been awful against him in the playoffs, including last year. Meanwhile, Creed Humphrey he's been a stud. That's a miss by Brandon Beane, period. And a lot of people got mad at me for making fun of him in a way. But look, it's okay to say he missed. It's okay to be a Bills fan, folks, and say, you know what? That's a miss there, man. Brandon Beane, you screwed the pooch there. You missed. Shit happens. People were saying they had Mitch Morse, which they did, and that they gave Mitch Morse a big contract, which they did. But you know what? Humphrey could have been a high-level guard for a year or two. I mean, the guy's literally an all-pro offensive lineman. The Bills have had a couple really good centers start their career at guard and then move to center. Eric Wood did it. He was a first-round pick. First year in Buffalo, he was a guard. Ultimately, he moved to center, and he had a really good career. So, I don't know. People got bent and twisted over my Boogie Basham take when the Bills could have had Creed Humphrey. Again, shit happens, man. It's okay. It's okay to say Brandon Beane screwed up, have a little fun with it, and move on. Cam LaFranco, Brandon Beane is a great guy on camera, but off camera at his job, he's average. so many busts in comparison to our competition. I am looking at the Giants now. They will be the Bills 2.0 at drafting. Dude, that's a bit harsh. Thanks for the take, but that's a bit harsh, man. Brandon Beane has his misses. I just highlighted and poked fun at one of them. All general managers have misses. Brandon Beane has drafted some gems as well. And I'm not even talking about it like a first round guy, like an Ed Oliver or a Greg Rizzo. I mean, he got James Cook and Terrell Bernard, Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford, all four of those guys in 2022, which none of them were first round picks. In fact, you could argue the lone shitty pick of up until that point was Kaiir Elam because you took him in the first. But you come back with Cook, Bernard, Shakir, Benford, four really good starters for the Bills in 2022. Brandon Beane nailed that draft. He got Spencer Brown in the third round, I think, the year before that. Year before that, he got Gabe Davis in the fourth round. He plucked Dane Jackson out of obscurity in the seventh round, and he became a good corner for the Bills. So, like, his track record's not elite, but it's good. And beyond the draft, he's had plenty of good signings as well. I mean, come on. Cole Beasley was a great free agent signing. John Brown was a good signing when they first signed him. Even last year, you spend $6.5 million, you get 10.5 sacks from Leonard Floyd. There's 31 other teams in the NFL right now that would sign up for paying a guy $6.5 million if you say he's going to get you 10.5 sacks. And then, of course, the Stephon Diggs trade. That was a great trade. Say what you will about Stephon now, but that was a great trade for the Bills. He helped Josh Allen become the quarterback he is. Then you had Josh help Stephon as well. It's mutual. That was a great trade. Come on. Of course, last but not least, you can go up, he traded up multiple times, get up high as he possibly could, and he got Josh Allen, which he could have easily, in that draft, took in Josh Rosen, and God only knows what kind of shape this team would have been in had he done that. So Brandon Beane, look, man, he's got his misses, but to say he's average, this team keeps winning the division every year. They're in the mix every year. Sure, they've underachieved in the playoffs. He deserves criticism. I do criticize him, but to say he's average, I think that's kind of a ridiculous take. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back here on this week's Podbag. I got to say, too, real quick, man. Shout out, I do this from time to time. Shout out to you podcasters out there, the good ones who do solo shows. They're so hard. I count 5, 6, 7 times. When I talk this much for 25 minutes, I am going to fumble all over myself a handful of times. I've already done it today. I'll probably do it a couple more times at least. But man, I think you guys like Joe Marino, Joe Miller does some on the solo tip. Bruce Nolan, of course. You guys are so talented. So good to be able to do these shows solo. All right, I got a kind of a question. If you watch the show the last couple of days, you would understand a little bit. Then we'll get back to a couple more football things as well. But Samantha wanted to say, it was great to hear you talk about your family on the show and how you finally saw them after all those years. I got into a rift with a few cousins and didn't speak to them for almost 15 years. It sucked. And after we reconnected, I realized how many years were wasted, and it made me sad. But anyway, very happy to hear about that, and best of luck to you and to your family. All right, again, I'm not going to take up a lot of time here, and I want to start beating, a dead horse here. I've been able to talk about it a little bit on the show. I don't think I've talked about it too much, and I don't want to get into the point where I do. I'll give you the short Cliff Notes version if you've missed the last handful of days. I went to New Jersey this past weekend for a family reunion with a bunch of cousins who I had not seen in a minimum of 34 years. 34 years at a minimum. And in some cases, like my second generations of cousins, I've never met before in my life. Again, I'll just do the Cliff Notes version here. I was 19 years old. My father, who was from New York, New Jersey, his entire side of the family is based in New York City and parts of New Jersey. When I was a kid, my dad, we were born and raised, I was born and raised, I should say, in Buffalo. My dad moved to Buffalo. He went to New Jersey every single summer. I would spend most of my summers as a kid in New Jersey, and I loved it. I got very close to a lot of my cousins, but I lived in Buffalo. My father lived in Buffalo. My dad died when he was only 41 years old. I was just 19 at the time. He died 2 days before Christmas, December 23rd, 1990. At that time, young, lost, devastated, crushed, you name it. That was me. And over the course of time, after my dad died and people from his family came up for the funeral, I completely lost touch with him over the course of a couple of years. Um, those couple of years turned into many years. Those many years turned into a decade. A decade turned into over 2 decades. At some point, started reconnecting with some people on social media, mainly Facebook. And that was nice, but not the same. And it kind of, it was a big hole, a big void in my life. I felt a little bit empty because I really didn't have any family at that point. My mother, I love my mom, man, but we went through some things and she moved to Virginia. My sister, who I love very much too, she moved to Virginia. Outside of them, really didn't have much family. My mom's side of the family was much, much older, scattered around. I never really got to know them. My father's side, all my cousins and stuff were my age. I grew up with them a lot. I loved those guys and girls, but we as adults drifted apart. There were things that went on in the family that I was not even privy to. There were weddings, deaths, rifts, feuds, all kinds of shit like that I never even knew about for years and years and years. Anyway, um, over the past year, my cousin Donna, shout out to her and shouted her out yesterday as well. I talked to her into throwing a party, and she did an incredible job of getting all these cousins together. And I went there this past weekend, and it was amazing. It was awkward. It was uncomfortable. There were a couple of difficult conversations along the way, but as the day went on, man, you just started feeling that love and family. And I started thinking about my dad and so many of their parents that are also deceased, looking down on us, being proud of us, saying, God damn, it's about freaking time. So I left New Jersey Sunday night, drove back to Buffalo, feeling like a different person, man. A lot more complete in my heart. I know it sounds corny and cheesy, but it's true. I do. I feel like a different person. I'm a different person now than I was a couple days ago. I feel like that void has been lifted. That monkey off the back is gone. And now I'm determined to make sure this wasn't just a great one and done weekend. You have a great time, you promise to stay in touch, and then you fall back off again. Not going to happen. I'll say too, the one thing that's different between like when I went through this with my family and say if this were to happen today, like if this happened today, it would have been a lot easier to still be able to maintain relationships with people because you could have Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. You stay in contact regularly with people from all over the country, all over the world for that matter. Back in 1990, to sound like the old person, but that's what I'm doing. Back in 1990, there was none of this shit. Hell, there weren't even cell phones really at the time. I don't even think, maybe beepers. I think they had a beeper. Cell phones were coming soon after. But anyway, my point was, it wasn't that easy. It was easy. It was easy to lose touch with people. How many of you, forget about family or for 34 years, but even if it was a handful of years, how many of you went to high school with people that you were great friends with that are probably older than say 35, 40 years old? And then the years that followed when you got into college and so on, you lose touch with people. It happened. It was easy to happen during those times. Now it's different. This probably never would have happened if, I would have been 19 in say 2012 instead of 1990. You know what I mean? It'd be a big difference. But anyway, I do appreciate that. Thank you, Samantha. That meant a lot to me. And I'm very proud of it too. I really, truly am. Like I said, I just feel much more fuller, like a different person. All right, enough for the sentimental, sobby shit here. Let's get back into a couple sports topics. Pew pews and barbecues. As a Chiefs fan, I have to know: does Bills Mafia have like an ongoing list of items your GM office has gift wrapped for us? All right, you know me, man. I don't mind this trash talk. I like it, man. Talk your shit especially if you're a Chiefs fan, you earned it. Gift wrapped a bit much, but there's some truth to what this dude or this woman is saying, whoever this may be. If you got a handle saying pew pew when you're a female, it's kind of rough. But as a Chiefs fan, you feel like you're getting shit gift wrapped to you from Bills Mafia. There's some truth to that. Patrick Mahomes is a Chief directly because of the Buffalo Bills. That's not deniable. Creed Humphrey is a Kansas City Chief directly because the Buffalo Bills took Boogie Basham 2 picks before him. That's not deniable. If Xavier Worthy turns out to be great, it's directly because the Buffalo Bills were on the clock at 28. Instead of drafting him, they traded down with the Kansas City Chiefs who took them. What this dude is saying is actually, it's fair. I'm sorry, but it is fair. Now, look, when it comes to Creed Humphrey, he's a second-round guy. You can easily say, well, 31 other teams could have taken him too. I get that. I do. But again, you talk about gift wrapping from Bills Mafia. You take Boogie Basham instead. Other teams could have went up before 10 and took in Patrick Mahomes. Hell, I think the Bears took Mitch Trubisky, ironically, second overall that same draft. I get it. But Patrick Mahomes is the Kansas City Chiefs because they traded up with the Buffalo Bills to take them. Look, you're the fan of a back-to-back Super Bowl champion, a team that's won 3 times over the last handful of years. Talk your shit. Because I know Bills Mafia, and if the Bills win one, you're going to talk their shit, as they should. At Bills SBL FG. Mahomes probably wouldn't be who he is if he went to a different team. He landed in a playoff-ready team and a Hall of Fame coach. But I think you could say that about any legend in any major team sport. I mean, a great player will make an average team good, and he'll make a good team great. But you don't become an icon without a great support system of coaches and players. Not in team sports. I don't give a shit who you are. Michael Jordan, the best ever, and I know there's going to be a lot of LeBron people who disagree, but look, for years, Michael Jordan was the greatest player in the NBA, but he didn't win shit. Started winning when Scottie Pippen became great, when they went out and got key, role players like Steve Kerr and Hodges, ultimately, of course, Rodman. So it's a team sport, and where you are, who your coach is, what players you play with, that shit matters. Josh Allen probably has a ring if he's a Kansas City Chief. I'll say it. I believe that. Best of the best, like Pat Mahomes, you could say he probably wins rings with lots of other teams. If Pat Mahomes is a Buffalo Bill, maybe the Bills win a Super Bowl. Maybe he plays lights out in 2022 at home against the Cincinnati Bengals when Josh Allen sucked in that one particular game. But still, it's a team sport. You don't do it by yourself. So there's some truth to that, even if you just say it in a weird way, because you're kind of underselling Pat Mahomes. He's the best right now, and I don't think you could take that away from him. But yeah, team sport. That's what I love about golfers and MMA fighters. I'm not a big MMA guy, but I love that about them. Boxers, tennis players. It's you versus them. You ain't relying on just a coach, or you ain't relying on teammates. You're out there and you're doing it yourself. At Jay Slater 89. This is regarding receivers. It's not a good room. I'm not even sure it's as good as 2019's. Brown and Beasley had more productive seasons before coming here than Samuel Hollins and MBS. Who knows what you're getting with Coleman? Potential just means you haven't done shit yet. Pretty strong take there. Look, you have to wait and see. Didn't really learn much, if anything, this summer about this wide receiver room. I mean, I like Khalil Shakir plenty down the stretch last year, and I think he's going to grow. Curtis Samuel is potential. We saw some of it over the last couple of years. Keon Coleman is just a rookie. Matt Collins, purely special teams last year, but 2 years ago at Vegas, he was pretty good. MVS, you know what he is. He's done some pretty good things. So there's potential, but it's also fair to say, well, that's not a unit that's really done anything. I mean, Samuel had one season where I think he may have been close maybe to 1,000 yards with Carolina in 2020 under Joe Brady. But in terms of proven track records, no, man, it's not a great receiver room. So you can talk about potential, and yeah, don't really mean shit until the games start. We'll see. I do like this room more than, I don't want to say most fans, because there's plenty of fans who do like this room, but I think it's better. Like, for an example, we did a show I did with Joe from Queens, and we counted down all the receiver rooms in the NFL. We only had the Bills 25th, but I think this team is a window of those receivers, or at very least middle of the pack. Um, Last three here. It's Cristobal says, I've said it a few times, but we heard after all these QB signings that Josh's contract is a steal. However, I feel like a quarterback of his caliber at the cap hit he has, we should feel significantly better about the roster around him. However, it feels lukewarm at best. Um, Look, this isn't a year. There's an aura of uncertainty. I keep saying that. I'll say it again now, too. There's an era, or an aura, I should say, of uncertainty. Josh's contract might be a steal compared to other quarterback contracts, but still, along with a few other contracts right now, it's really strapped the Bills for this specific 2024 season. Here's the way I feel about the Bills, and you talk about their roster. Could it be better? Of course, it could always be better. The Bills could have held on to Stefon Diggs, although some might argue that doesn't make the offense better. It might look better on paper, but you can make a reasonable case that maybe this offense will ultimately be better without Stefon Diggs. But you can make an argument that, they should have went out and they should have tried to trade it for a Brandon Ayuk. That, without question, makes the offense better, right? Or you go out and you go get a Justin Simmons, someone like that. Doesn't happen. Not this year. Look, the Bills are trying to win right now. But this roster, if it feels lukewarm at best, it's because, again, they're not willing to spend $25-30 million this year to go trade for Brandon Ayuk. Or they're not willing to give Justin Simmons $8 million that he got from Atlanta to be their safety this year. Brandon Beane is committed to having more cap space next season, better draft capital next year and beyond. And by the way, he's got 2 twos next year from the Stefon Diggs trade. So the Bills are in better shape cap wise, and they're in really good shape in terms of draft capital. Plus, you're going to get a comp pick next year. And, if you could win with good defense and an all-world quarterback, fantastic. And that could happen. Josh Allen is an all-world quarterback. Josh Allen has the ability to see this, to run an offense that is capable of being good enough for the Bills to win somewhere between 10 and maybe even 12, 13 games. This is not a chump defense. It's really not a chump defense. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Terrell Bernard, 2 really good corners. There's pieces there. Von Miller still may be something. I think it's a big blow without Matt Milano. Big question marks for sure, especially at safety. But this is a team that can win. The difference is I don't think, like over the last couple of years, is that Brandon Beane's willing to go, quote unquote, all in, to at least financially anyway, to make it happen. Now, maybe that changes near the deadline. Maybe the Bills are off to an incredible start and they got a major injury and you got to find a way to address it. Maybe Brandon Beane does that. He did it last year by picking up Russell Douglas. All right, last 2 here, non-sports ones too. At Ariel Grande 9 says, I love the shows with Joe from Queens. Dude's general attitude towards life is totally my speed. So what you're saying is that you guys are like fellow curmudgeons. I say it all the time. Joe can be hard for me to deal with. We have different views. We have different attitudes, different approaches on a lot of shit. We're also very vocal about it, stubborn, which, towards each other, which leads to bickering. Sometimes it leads to beef. But love him or hate him, man, I think Joe he's a good podcaster. I truly feel that way because he says what he wants to say. He ain't worried about the fans. He ain't worried about the media, or he ain't worried about other content creators liking him. I give him credit for that. I do. And he's different, in a podcasting space full of like film people now. Everyone seems to be a film expert. I wish I was. I'm not. But, everyone seems to be some form, or at least they think they are, a film expert or analytical or, experts about whatever. Joe's like the absolute opposite, man. Just old school, curmudgeon, hollering, angry about some shit analyst type. That's what he is. I dig it mostly. It's different than most Bills content creators. I wish he wasn't kind of like a dick to the media people as much as he can be. I could definitely rub some people the wrong way, especially if you don't know him. Maybe it's just because I know him now well enough to kind of let some stuff just, roll off the shoulder, shit like that. I do think he's too harsh sometimes on the media, but you know what? Sometimes the media does need to get called out. And there's not a lot of people out there that have a podcast that will do that because they're afraid that that man or that woman who's in the media won't do their show. They won't retweet them when they ask them to, shit like that. That ain't Joe. That's me. And I'm good with that, but it's not Joe. I think he's a good podcaster. And when you watch a show or listen to a show, especially following a Bills game during a regular season, I think you'll see the difference there. For some people, we're not going to break down things that some people, at least anyway, won't understand. Joe's just going to give you his raw freaking opinions, good or bad. Anyway, last one here. At Bing Bong Bills, cringiest TV scene. He says, this is him. Mine is Sopranos season 3 when Dr. Melfi gets raped. Damn, dude, that's dark. It's dark. Cringiest TV scene. This one for me is easy. I tweeted about this as well. Mine will always be Sons of Anarchy when they're in prison. Jax is in prison with Opie, and Opie gets beat to death in prison. Literally beat to death in prison. So hard to watch. I won't watch it. And I'll tell you this too. I have a kind of, let's just say, an underground kind of service where there's some TV shows that are available 24/7. And I watch Sons of Anarchy almost on a loop. Like it plays chronologically from start to finish and just restarts. I'll go a couple days, I'll put it on. Sometimes I do it a couple times a day, or I'll go a few days without going, but I always find where it's at in the series. Many things that I've enjoyed, I've watched several times. Like I've watched Clay die. I've watched the very end of it. I've watched the pilot episode. I've watched many pinnacle moments of the series. But the one thing I will not and never, never, never will watch is Opie getting literally beaten to death in prison. Just freaking hard to watch, and I won't do it. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for this episode. Man, this was longer than I thought it was going to be. Should have known that, though. Tough to do these solos. Again, shout out to all you out there who do it so well. I won't be solo tomorrow, thank God. Like I said, Anthony Marino will be with me. We will talk more about the Bills roster as it stands 24 hours from now. We're going to talk about a couple of positions that has left kind of Anthony wanting more from the summer, promising things that never really materialize. So we'll cover that on tomorrow's show. I'm going to let you know too, next week with it being kickoff to the regular season, I got a couple of big live shows planned with some very special guests, but we'll get into that over the next couple of days. Anyway, till tomorrow. Yeah, like I said, I am at the end of the rope. I'm almost delirious right now. I feel like I've been talking solo for so long. See you guys tomorrow.